At first, the galaxy thought humans were soft. They said Earth was too kind, too civilized, too polite. The Council of Elder Species, the old-timers who'd survived 1,000 skirmishes over 1,000 stars, they watched from a distance and decided we weren't built for real war. They saw compassion in our eyes, mercy in our victories, restraint in our power, and they mistook it all for weakness. That was their first mistake. When humans came to the galactic stage, we came with open hands and open minds. We brought medicine that reversed nerve decay. We helped terraform dying moons. We signed every peace treaty, joined every alliance, even offered aid to the species who once conquered others. We believed cooperation could beat bloodshed. We believed a unified galaxy was worth more than any one empire's pride, but kindness, in the end, is a choice. And when you take that choice away from humanity, you're left with something else entirely. The turning point wasn't a massive invasion or a grand betrayal. It was quieter, simpler. A satellite station orbiting a disputed trade route went dark. 87 humans on board, many of them scientists and engineers, not soldiers. The footage came later, grainy, shaky, no sound, just lights flashing, walls burning, people running, and then one frame. Frozen in all the archives, a child's drawing taped to a bulkhead wall, half melted, singed by plasma fire. A sun with a smiley face. Earth, blue and green. Stick figures holding hands. The attack was blamed on unknown raiders. A diplomatic stall tactic in plain words. Everyone knew who'd done it. The Vorkan Syndicate liked to probe at the edges of peace. Test the limits of treaties when they thought they could get away with it. They got away with it until they didn't. Earth didn't respond with a declaration. No angry speeches. No public retaliation. Just ... silence. Council records show that 3 full Terran fleets disappeared from known space within a week. Their transponders off? No official orders on record? Just gone. What came next wasn't war, not at first. It was precision. A mining outpost in Vorkan space? Gone in 72 seconds. No survivors. A weapons lab nestled in a black cloud nebula? Ripped apart by quantum shock? Whole syndicate planets began shutting off civilian channels. Terrified that any transmission would trigger a strike, the galaxy whispered that something had changed in the humans' eyes, because it had. We'd warned them, once, in our own quiet human way. We said you wouldn't like us angry, said it with nervous laughter, with a shrug. They took it as a joke. They didn't understand that we weren't boasting, we were warning them. Our strength isn't in how many ships we have, or how advanced our engines are. Our strength is in what we hold back and what we choose not to do. Until the line is crossed. 3 months after the satellite incident, a delegation of Vorkan leaders arrived on Council Prime to swear innocence. They sat smug in their high-backed chairs, long fingers twitching as they lied through their teeth. That's when one human representative stood up, just one. Her voice quiet, her suit unadorned. She didn't carry a weapon. Didn't threaten anyone. She just told them what was coming, not vengeance, not war, either. Lesson. Because Earth's politeness, that thin layer of civilized self-control. We all wore like armor that was gone. Now the galaxy would learn what humanity really looked like beneath the courtesy. We weren't showing mercy anymore. That mask had melted with the child's drawing. Some in the council wanted to intervene. They sent messages, sanctions, apologies that weren't quite apologies, as if centuries of galactic etiquette could fix what they let happen. But none of them understood. We didn't need their help. We didn't want their forgiveness. The humans going dark weren't asking for support. They weren't asking for anything. They were preparing. The shift wasn't loud, not like the wars of old. Not like laser barrages and orbital bombardments. This was surgical, humbling. An entire Vorkan cruiser disappeared mid-fold, vanishing into subspace and never emerging. Its sister ship, next in formation, received a single message as it slowed to check for survivors. *, don't look for us. You won't see us coming. *, the crew quit the next day. All of them, that was the pattern. Resistance followed by silence. Then fear. Species that once mocked humans for being overly emotional, Overly empathetic, now begged the council to do something. Earth didn't speak at all. Our forces moved like shadows. They didn't leave bodies. They left empty halls, broken systems, warnings carved into steel. Not graphic, not gory. Just enough to let them know we could have done worse, and that was the point. Humans didn't unleash chaos. We controlled it, directed it, showed it to those who thought war was just about numbers and firepower. They didn't count the cost of breaking the peace. They didn't realize the ones who build are also the ones who can destroy with perfect, terrifying precision when required. And now the galaxy was seeing what a human war really looked like. Not endless battles, not chest-thumping glory, just inevitability. One target after the next, always 3 steps ahead. The kind of war that doesn't make headlines, it rewrites history. But even as the strikes spread, as installations fell and rumors grew, there were whispers of something deeper. A plan that stretched past retaliation, past even justice. Because humanity wasn't just reacting anymore, we were preparing for something, gathering, waiting. No one knew what. No one except the humans doing the gathering. At a listening vault on the edge of council space, a young technician non-human picked up fragments across the black, words that made no sense, and too much inversion complete. Target sets confirmed. Operation Mirror start pending, awaiting final signal. The technician didn't understand the language structure, not at first, but they knew fear when they felt it. The same fear from the day the broadcast hit screens across the galaxy, the one with no visuals, just words. Asterisk, asterisk, you mistook our mercy for weakness. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Now, here's what you missed while we were being kind. Asterisk, asterisk, it wasn't directed at anyone. It was just broadcast. As if the humans didn't care who heard it now, the best trackers in the galaxy haven't found the source of the message or the fleets, wherever humanity is hiding. They're doing it deliberately. Waiting for the next trigger, and the rest of the stars are holding their breath, wondering what happens when the last button gets pushed. When humanity finally stops holding anything back, because the lesson's not over yet. In fact, it's just beginning. What most of the galaxy didn't understand was that humans never sought war. It wasn't something we longed for. It wasn't something we glorified. But we were shaped by it. The Earth they read about in documents, the peaceful blue planet full of thriving cities, scientists, artists, and explorers, that was just the surface. They didn't see the layers beneath. The long scars written in our history. Wars not won with firepower alone, but with endurance, grit, and cold, hard choices. The kind of wars where survival meant digging deep, finding strength in pain, courage in loss, hope in rubble. So when the outsider races watched Earth rise, they saw the light. But they never asked where the fire came from. Centuries before we reached the stars, we burned our own skies, shattered our own cities, nearly wiped ourselves out more than once. But every time we fell, we rebuilt. And with each collapse, we learned that was the real difference between us and the ones who thought they mastered war. They knew conquest. We knew consequence. And that made us far more dangerous. The operation Earth had set in motion wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about sending a message to the Vorkan Syndicate anymore. It was about something larger. A correction. A reset. The quiet murmurs of inversion protocol hadn't just been words on intercepted frequencies. It was a strategy one Earth hadn't used in over a century. A fail-safe designed not to destroy our enemies, but to make sure they understood why crossing that line came at a cost they could never imagine. The humans involved in the operation weren't the bureaucrats or the diplomats. They were the other ones, the quiet professionals, the ones whose records didn't show up on alliance rosters or fleet logs. People pulled from forgotten programs, from the fringe colonies where the galaxy rarely looked. Engineers who could sabotage a spaceport with a magnetic pencil. Exospatial navigators who could blind jump through data fog. Ground operatives who didn't carry rank insignias. Only quiet focus. Each had gone dark the moment Earth stopped being polite. One of them, a man now known only by his calcine asterisk Galion, had disappeared from the orbital colony 7 months earlier. His file had been wiped clean through 5 layers of encryption, leaving only one note behind on a classified EarthGov channel. Asterisk asterisk, he walks the edge now. Mirror active. Asterisk asterisk, nobody needed a translation. That phrase alone sent a chill down the spine of anyone who remembered Earth's cold logic doctrine, a doctrine born from Earth's ugliest defensive wars. When empathy was finally shelved in favor of calculation, not because we abandoned our humanity, but because it was the only way to preserve it, everyone believed that code had been mothballed, locked in theory books. They hoped it had, but now, pieces of it were reawakening. Hidden installations around the galaxy began to light up again, though no official logs showed activity. These were Earth-built outposts, long assumed abandoned, scattered on frozen moons, asteroid belts, even cloaked within the gravity well of blue giant stars. Nobody knew how many there were. Not even the Council, but one by one, they were coming online, and no message ever followed the activation dot at the same time. Civilian supply routes in sectors close to Vorkan space started being rerouted without explanation. Then those sectors went quiet, entirely black zones, cordoned off from communication. The Council claimed they'd lost contact. Earth said nothing. Other species began to whisper about ghost corridors, trade lanes now empty of traffic, yet sensors still picked up faint, untraceable signatures. Some claimed invisible human fleets passed through those lanes. Others believed entire regions had been quarantined for something. Worse, the fear wasn't just about human firepower anymore. It was about possibility, because no one really knew how far Earth's tech had progressed over the decades. While others showed off jump cruisers and plasma stations, Earth stayed quiet. They published research, shared science, but they never boasted. And now the galaxy wondered if that had been deliberate. If Earth had been masking their true edge all along. Then came the artifact. It was recovered from a shattered Vorkan command ship, drifting near a dead planet in neutral space. A civic patrol cruiser from the Ilari species stumbled on it by accident. The ship's hull looked melted from the inside out, but not a single shot had scorched its outer plating. No alarms had been triggered. No escape pods launched. The ship had simply collapsed. And the core chamber was a single object surviving alone in the wreckage. It wasn't a weapon. Just a small, black cube, pulsing with faint violet light. The patrol team brought it back under isolation protocol. But within 48 hours, every system linked to that cube began to fail, from cameras to gravity stims. Before the quarantine AI shut the lab down permanently, the last feed showed text scrolling in clean Terran font. Asterisk asterisk, 1 for the beginning, 1 for the lesson, 1 for the end. Asterisk asterisk, it was signed only with a single character. Experts guessed it meant Delta, part of Earth's old Intel lexicon. Others said it signified change. Either way, no one could deny the implication. Earth wasn't attacking out of rage. It was teaching, and the galaxy had flunked the first test. One curious detail emerged around this time. Across hundreds of planetary systems, humans began pulling back from embassies, trade zones, patrol routes. Where once Earth had extended hands of friendship, now there were locked doors. Where there had been science exchanges, there was silence. Earth had stopped playing the diplomatic game. Even more unsettling were the signals discovered by accident encrypted. Terran networks bouncing messages between deep space listening stations in remote zones thought long abandoned. The codes used were so old they predated known interaction with the galaxy. That's when some started to realize the human response might have been planned long before the satellite incident. Maybe not the details, but the framework, which led to a darker question. What had Earth always been preparing for? Despite growing fear, most species still held on to hope. They believed the Council could contain this, that someone could reopen the dialogue. But the truth was, Earth was no longer seated at the diplomatic table. They'd stood up and walked out, quietly, completely, and not everyone left behind was a civilian. Take Thea, for example, though that wasn't her real name. Only the coding name carried on minor cum intercepts. She had boarded a council science vessel as a cultural liaison, cheerful, unassuming, big smile, soft voice. Helped catalog ruin markers and taught Terran ethics to curious alien scholars. 3 weeks after the station blackout, she vanished with every core navigation file from the ship and left, behind a short message etched into the docking bay's bulkhead. Asterisk, asterisk, your future is built on borrowed calm. Time's up. Asterisk, asterisk, no one could track her again. But dispatch scouts claim the coordinates she'd left led to a drifting planetary ring fragment orbiting a sunless star. A place not on any map? With energy signatures resembling neural data arrays larger than battleships. Was it a tool? A weapon? A warning? The scouts never found out. No one did because they never came back. The council's panic, once hidden behind protocol and procedure, had started leaking into the public. News outlets quietly admitted growing tactical gaps in galactic surveillance. Emergency summits were called behind closed doors. Civilian migration off major planets began to spike. Along with strange disappearances, everyone wanted to know, what's the endgame? Was Earth planning to destroy the Vorkan worlds outright? Push the Syndicate into collapse? Or something worse? But those caught up in that line of thinking missed the point. This was never just about the Syndicate. This was about the lie the galaxy had chosen to believe. That civilization makes you soft. That kindness means weakness. That the smiling human in the room is the safest one to ignore. And now the ones who ignored us were staring at stars in fear, wondering if the storm was coming for them. Next, they hadn't realized that the real war didn't start when ships collided. The real war started the moment Earth stopped, explaining itself, and somewhere out in the dark, Operation Mirror waited for the final signal. The station at Gorus Point had been abandoned for over 30 years, at least according to the latest council records. Orbiting a dim red gas giant and lost in the middle of Tier 5 neutral space, it had been written off as a failed joint development project. The official reports said structural instability, inadequate funding, and repeated system failures had forced an evacuation. That was a lie. It was never actually abandoned. It had gone underground figuratively and literally. Beneath its surface structure, under layers of leaded alloys and electromagnetic distorters, lay a deep-core Terran operations site, silent ever since the peace accords were signed generations ago. It had been put in sleep mode not because peace was assured, but because the planners knew someday somebody would test Earth's patience again. Now it was waking up. A figure moved through the corridor, fluid and silent. His name was never used, not even in briefings. Call sign, gray line, another ghost. His face was uncovered, but plain, forgettable. That was intentional. He moved with the ease of someone who didn't need armor to be dangerous, and in one gloved hand he carried a compact neural module shaped like a coin. He reached the reactor chamber, plugged in the disk, and stepped back. The lights returned one by one, blue, then red, then green. DNA authorization accepted, terminal sync complete. Gorus Point was now synchronized with nearly a dozen other abandoned Earth stations across the galaxy. One human. One touch. The lights of old war systems came back as if they'd only blinked off yesterday. Somewhere, far away, deep in Council Core space, a man listened as the signal pulsed through encoded Terran relay bands. He wasn't military. Not anymore. But his job was more important now. He reviewed the data. Systems aligned. Signal tree converging. Civilian alarm levels still under threshold. And most critically, no recorded leaks to non-human intelligence nets. That meant the timing was still under Earth's control, still on schedule, but that schedule was approaching a point of no return. The fragile web of alliances holding the galaxy together was fraying. You could see it in the headlines that had stopped naming Earth directly, instead calling it a rogue actor or post-peace element. You could see it in how the Council delayed votes, pushing off anything to do with interstellar security. And worst of all, you could see it in the way other empires were starting to quietly arm themselves. Not because they wanted to join the fight, but because deep down, They knew the rules had already changed. The Syndicate, once so smug and blood-hungry, had been uncharacteristically silent. After their second supply world went dark, they stopped broadcasting threats. No more demands. No counterattacks. They had ships and soldiers ready, but even they weren't sure where to aim them anymore. Everywhere they aimed, Earth wasn't there. Not yet, and that was the second part of the fear growing across the systems. Earth was waiting for something. Troop deployments continued in a slow drip, but they were never public. Ships slipped between blind space corridors. Some civilian vessels didn't even seem like military, but people knew. You could tell. Too clean, too quiet, too focused. Colonies that once relied on trade began to notice their Terran partners pulling out. Tech contracts canceled? Shared research terminals scrub it overnight, but nowhere was the tension felt more than on. Council Prime, the supposed seat of civilized life in the galaxy. Inside the Council's private deliberation chamber, 13 species stood in uneasy silence. The humans hadn't requested a seat today. They hadn't shown up. Their council chair sat empty, untouched. But everyone in the room could feel the weight of it. The Ashiri were first to speak. They were tall and graceful, skin like glass, and their matriarch addressed the room with practiced elegance. Earth must be contacted directly. We must demand they de-escalate. Their silence is more dangerous than speech. An Ovek warrior snapped back instantly. They are not silent. They are acting. And not irrationally. You all saw the recording. The station was attacked and civilians were slaughtered. And still, Earth seeks no alliance, reads no pardon. This is strategic. A murmur passed through the chamber, then a voice none of them welcomed, but all of them feared, came from the far wall. It wasn't a speaker. It was a transmission. No encryption key had authorized it. No channel had been opened. It just arrived. The human voice was clear. No more diplomacy. Observe, and maybe you'll understand. But interfere and you'll learn what we've kept hidden out of kindness. It ended before any reply could be formed. Some believed it was pre-recorded. Others swore they saw a real-time modulation in the tone. A feedback loop designed to record biological reactions of listeners. All theories led to one truth: Earth was watching. Even here, back in the outer sectors, another shift unfolded in real time. Terran field operatives, people who had been laying low in colony positions for years, some even decades, began activating. Quiet agents, seated long ago where no one thought to look, academic institutes, medical centers, agricultural oversight teams, seemingly normal humans who suddenly stopped, sending regular updates and instead flipped to encrypted burst signals. They weren't moving against anyone, not. Yet they were observing, and their reports flowed upward through mirrored channels no other species could trace, back to those who held the reins of operation. Miro. And in one particular channel deep, within Earth's remaining data, banks, a restricted layer known only as the subsurface archive, began decrypting. It was a protocol kept locked beneath every military system since Earth first joined the interstellar community. Nothing flashy. No doomsday device or ultimate weapon. Just names. Thousands of names, dates, event markers, plotted out years in advance, people who had been targets, events that had been closely monitored, moments. Earth had categorized as acceptable losses in a smaller category. The unacceptable, that list was now active. And at the top of it, the Gorak operation, the station raid that started everything. It was never random. Earth had known. Maybe not in time to save everyone, but enough to see the pattern, enough to trigger Response Zero. In the shadows of Sector 12, another threat had started to unravel. An investigative team council appointed and completely non-human had intercepted footage from a salvage crew's escape pod after drifting for weeks. The feed looked ruined at first, flickering, distorted, but then someone cleaned the data. It showed shapes, not ships, but projections. Moving patterns of distortion like gravity itself was folding. No trademark Terran design, no visible tech, just bending space. and within those folds, a human voice speaking directly into the camera, unfiltered. You never knew our real edge. Now you're seeing it. The signal was terminated with a hard burn that fried every device in the rescue. Crew's database. The team reviewing it called it a weapon demonstration. Systems analysis disagreed. It wasn't a weapon. It was a reminder. The council began to panic more openly. Sanctions were discussed. Fleet mobilization put on high alert. But no one acted first, not yet. Because whether they admitted it or not, every species was afraid that if they moved against Earth too quickly, too loudly, too aggressively, it would prove everything the humans had been quietly preparing for, and maybe that was the greatest fear of all, that Earth hadn't acted out of control. They acted because they knew what it meant when diplomacy failed, knew what it meant to go to war with a species that doesn't scream, doesn't gloat, doesn't conquer for pride, just moves like a storm you didn't see coming until your feet were soaked, and the sky was gone, and in the center of all of it, Earth, quiet still, but watching, waiting, and somewhere, deep in Terran command space, a final protocol awaited only one line of voice command to initiate. Then the real war would begin. In the silence between stars, inside the shaded edge of Sector 36K, something massive moved. It didn't light up sensors, didn't broadcast coordinates. It didn't even appear solid at first, just a distortion across particle arrays like a ripple peeling across space itself. Gravity wells shifted around it, time signatures pulled slightly off-center. Most advanced systems couldn't lock onto it, and those that did refused to believe it was real, but it was there. An object the size of a moon, though humans didn't call it a ship. They called it Aegis Threshold. It was not a carrier or a dreadnought. It carried no fleet. It was the fleet, an autonomous battle station layered with old tech and dark protocols. Built beneath the icy crust of Callisto more than 80 years ago, Earth had finished it in secret. Now, it was moving toward the inner sidereal border of council-monitored space. No announcement. No threats. Just presence. A pressure building like a storm wall. No one could see inside Aegis Threshold, except those allowed to dwell within its command core, people who didn't wear uniforms, people who had no public record. One of them stood on a hard-light platform, watching the systems come online. She looked no older than 40, but her eyes gave something away. The stillness, the long shadow of memory. Her name wasn't given, only her title, Watcher. She wasn't overtly dangerous, didn't raise her voice, didn't order the launch of anything. She'd simply been listening, observing, waiting for signals to converge, for the stars to tilt in one direction. They were tilting now. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke to the station's AI kernel. Prepare final synchronization. Ghost relays active. Begin termination phase position staging. At those words, bridges of invisible light arced into distant systems. Old relays backdoors laid into council infrastructure decades ago woke without warning. Entire sections of surveillance data from neutral sectors vanished in seconds. Then came the pulse. It was subtle, measured, not destructive, but powerful. Every synthetic relay built during the United Tech Accord era suddenly dropped to dark mode. No sabotage, just silence. They'd been built using Earth-based firmware. Now they'd answered home. Entire council sectors went blind for just 18 seconds, and that was enough. Because in that space, those 18 seconds, humans made their largest coordinated move operation. Mirror moved out of silent observation and into full execution. Staging on a barren moon orbiting HFY, a small engineering outpost blinked to life. Once marked as inactive, it now generated enough power to rival a capital fleet engine. Beneath the rocky surface, hidden bunkers, open crystal interfaces, and inert drones long buried started to rise from the dust. A single Terran operative stepped into the light, carrying a sealed case. Inside, a command link beacon. He didn't speak. Didn't need to when he activated the case. 37 mirrored signals jumped to light across the system. Elsewhere, high above a neutral transport route often used by the Asaran traders, came the Earth-built vessel End of Answer, unregistered, hovering quietly in low-grav sync. Its outer skin changed appearance every 6 hours, maintaining a mutable identity across known species. Now it showed its true colors. Black polish with old-world white sigils, underneath symbols no one outside of Earth could translate anymore. It didn't open comms. Didn't fire weapons. It opened its data core, and what it released wasn't offensive material. It was history. Thousands of years of unfiltered Terran transcripts. Logs of every agreement, every betrayal, every time Earth had offered peace and bent toward compromise only to be stabbed from behind. No lies, just facts, moments the Council quietly buried. Stories rewritten into miscommunications or isolated incidents. Now, the unfiltered truth flowed freely. Across satellites, private networks, civilian terminals. Unstoppable. One audio file in particular made its way across 1,000 personal data slips within an hour. A child's voice, recovered from the lost station in orbit of the Denner system, recorded just days before the attack. It was a message her parents had helped her send back to Earth. "Hi, Mom, I saw a comet today. It was really blue. I drew it. I'll show you when I get home." She never made it home. That clip cut deeper than any coded warning or military tactic. It reminded everyone that this wasn't about politics or power anymore. It was about the cost of peace taken for granted. And still, Earth hadn't attacked anyone directly. Instead, they unspooled the threads of their forgotten warnings, the ones no one had listened to. And now, most in the galaxy didn't know what to fear more, the possibility of war, or the realization that Earth had already started it, and no one noticed, on Core Station V. The Council's emergency assembly reformed for the 4th time in as many days. Half the seats were now remote holograms, some too fearful to appear in person, some just gone. The debate was chaotic. Accusations flew harder than any ordnance. One delegate shouted, "Earth is destabilizing the order we've built for generations." Another barked back, "They warned you. You ignored them like they were children." Only one delegate stood still, calm amidst the storm. A Terran observer placed generations ago by peaceful agreement. He hadn't spoken in years, but now his voice dropped into the silence with a weight that cut through the noise. "You asked us to be civilized. We were. You asked us to be forgiving. We were, but you never asked what would happen when we weren't." No answer came, because behind the curtains of Council politics, the quiet power Earth had groomed was now fully visible. Civilian sectors across multiple empires began to fracture into fear-driven chaos. Trade alliances started pulling out of Council policy. Asaran merchant fleets refused to enter Vorkan-controlled systems. Targeted sabotage of critical communications popped up, subtle but effective, and at the center of every question, one name: humanity. Terran operatives didn't move openly now, but every system seemed to hum with their presence. Any whisper of Earth was followed by silence. As if just speaking it might summon something real. An old frontier captain, a hardened Neverth veteran named Drassic, reportedly broke Council silence in a private channel. Humans built in silence. They knew peace was temporary. We thought they were content to be quiet. We never realized they were sharpening knives in the dark. He wasn't wrong, because even as Council factions scrambled to respond, the docks of old Earth weren't quiet. They were on full lockdown. Not terrified. Not defensive. Focused. Ships hadn't stopped launching. They were just going ... elsewhere. The latest Terran cruiser wasn't designed for battle in the traditional sense. It didn't carry missiles or hangar bays. It carried data, signals, precision disruption fields. Designed to dismantle without touching guns, they called it Mercy's End. Its mission wasn't to burn systems. It was to turn a mirror on the entire galaxy. To force them to see what Earth had withheld for so long, that we never lacked power. We just chose not to use it. Now, that choice was off the table, and still, despite everything, there was one final signal. Earth hadn't sent. One final move left in cold silence. The world waited. The Council scrambled. The Syndicate braced, but Earth was still, watching. And the galaxy leaned forward, breathless. waiting to see what would happen when the last line was crossed, because deep in the command deck of Aegis Threshold, the Watcher laid her hand flat against a control plate. A silent countdown ticked inside her mind. She closed her eyes and whispered one final word, almost. And all across the stars, systems listened. Quiet fell again, but not for long. In the space between silence and consequence, the countdown reached 0. But no weapons fired. No planets vanished from the star charts. No fleets were vaporized. Instead, something far worse for those who had long mistaken power for noise happened. Every data channel across the major sectors filled at once. Unhackable, undeletable, originating from a source no one could block, a single human message echoed across systems. Stations, councils, and colonies. Asterisk, asterisk. This is the final courtesy Earth will extend. We will not come to the table again. We will not be silent again. You will remember us not as warmongers, but as the ones you should have respected when we were still kind. Asterisk, asterisk, then came the rest. Video files, audio logs, sensor readings, testimonies, proof of everything. All the betrayals covered up. The treaties broken because Earth took the high road. The missions where humans sacrificed resources to protect others who never returned the gesture. Names and dates. Diplomatic votes rewritten. Civilian disasters shrugged off by allied species. While humans emptied their supplies to help. It wasn't revenge. It was truth. And the galaxy wasn't ready for it, for the first time in memory. The council chambers went dark. Official operations froze. Species that once ruled star lanes with arrogance found themselves overwhelmed not by Earth's weapons, but by their own history collapsing in on them. Their people were outraged. Riots sparked not on human worlds, but on council-aligned planets where citizens demanded to know why the truth had been buried, more than a military operation. This was deterrence by exposure. Humanity had flipped the weapon inwards. Not on the body, but on the mind. On memory. And it worked. The Vorkan Syndicate, silent for over 2 weeks, finally broke transmission silence. Their message was unusual. Not aggressive. No bluster. Just one line, asterisk, asterisk. We did not expect you to respond like this. We were wrong. Asterisk, asterisk. There was no apology. No offer to repair the damage. But the tone had changed, from disdain to fear. From power to doubt. They pulled their fleets back within hours. Their forward bases went dark. Multiple generals resigned. And for the first time in modern galactic history, a known aggressor stepped away without firing a final shot. Earth hadn't leveled a city. They hadn't even wasted energy on orbital positioning. They'd simply shown the mirror. And watched. The command deck of Aegis Threshold remained quiet. Its process was complete. The Watcher sat at her station once more, overlooking the fleet, not a fleet of warships, but of knowledge ships, data carriers, intel platforms. Weapons of truth below her, crew members moved with practiced focus. There was no celebration. They didn't need it. The target wasn't defeat. The target had always been understanding. For weeks, the messages continued to circulate. Earth did not respond to praise. They didn't open dialogue. They didn't rejoin the council. Instead, they reconnected only with those who had offered help when it hadn't been the popular choice. A few planets. A few curious cultures. Not many. But enough. Small Earth-led fleets began forming what was soon called the Voluntary Accord. An alternative to the council. Not a replacement, just another option. One based not on operational dominance, but mutual accountability. Other species hesitated at first. Then curiosity grew. Then interest. Within months, dozens joined. Not because they were drawn to power, but because they feared being on the other side of its silence again. Earth allowed them in, with conditions, full transparency. Actual debate. Enforcement, not suggestion. The Accord didn't replace war. It made it expensive. Slowly, the chaos that had followed the initial reveal began to settle. Council factions began publicly acknowledging their role in the build-up to conflict. Structural reforms were proposed. Some species distanced themselves from the council completely, shifting trade and policy toward Earth instead. Even the Vorkan Syndicate, now fractured from within, opened neutral channels, quietly, carefully. But Earth didn't reply. Not yet, because this wasn't about forgiveness. It never had been. It was about balance and proving once and for all that humanity didn't raise its voice because it was weak, but because it always tried peace first, because it wanted connection more than control. But when that attempt was shattered, when kindness was mistaken for cowardice, Earth had shown what was behind the curtain, and nobody wanted to see that side again. 1 year after Operation Mirror concluded, independent galactic surveys reported a 62% drop in militarized border conflicts. Unaligned pirate factions went offline. Old rogue guys suddenly stopped appearing in fringe systems. Rumors spread that Earth agents had cleaned house, though no proof could be found beyond patterns, disappearances, and oddly timed malfunctions. No weapons announcements. No full confrontation, just silence. And the galaxy learned that silence meant Earth was watching. Back on Earth, life didn't return to normal. It didn't have to. Humanity had changed, and this time, so had the narrative. The footage of the girl's comet drawing now floated in museums across several systems. Not as propaganda, but as a reminder. Peace looks fragile until someone protects it with unwavering hands, and this time, those hands didn't just build bridges. They built consequences. In one quiet corner of Mars Research Colony, the Watcher, no longer using the title, sat by a young group of new analysts training for proactive diplomacy. A child among them asked her once, "Why didn't we just blow them all up?" She smiled gently. "Because if they had done this to us, I'd want someone to give them the truth too. That's what makes us human." The boy went quiet, and the session continued. In the end, Earth became something else in the eyes of the galaxy. Not an empire, not a council seat, not a silent background actor, but a boundary, a line between what could be tolerated and what would be answered. Kindness looked different now. It wasn't soft. It wasn't an invitation to pray. It was sharp, measured, deliberate, and it had teeth. Subplots that once whispered through layers of espionage and soft politics now connected. The quiet agents returned not as soldiers but as diplomats, security consultants, and ambassadors of a different kind of strength. Not everyone loved humanity, but no one underestimated them again. And somewhere, far beyond all the chatter, deep in the systems humans still called untouchable, the ghost fleet stood in shadow. Inactive. Watching. Because Earth didn't crave war. And it didn't constantly strike back, but the moment you forced its hand, you learned exactly what followed when politeness ran out. And now, with the stars calmed and systems recovering, the message had been recorded in every language. You can talk with Earth, you can trade with Earth, you may even earn its friendship, but never again asterisk, never again asterisk mistake. Earth silence for weakness, because when humans stop being kind, they don't conquer, they end things with focus, with precision. And with a fire older than the stars. That is what they learned. That is what Earth became. And no one would ever forget.